1,400 pounds of food, 500 miles from civilization, one missed phone call. That's all it took to turn a photographer's wilderness dream into a frozen grave above the Arctic Circle. These aren't just numbers. They're reminders that in the age of self-reliance and modern adventure, the smallest miscalculation can become the ultimate price. Carl McCunn was no amateur. The 35-year-old had survived Alaska's Brooks Range before. His 1976 solo expedition proved he could handle the isolation, the cold, the wildlife. He knew what he was doing. The summer of 1981 would tell a different story, one that began with meticulous preparation and ended with a diary entry that still haunts survival experts today, because Carl's death wasn't caused by bears, starvation, or hypothermia alone. It was caused by trust. Carl McCunn was born in Texas in 1945, raised in the kind of modest family where hard work wasn't optional, it was expected. His parents valued self-reliance above all else. Fix your own problems, stand on your own 2 feet, never depend on others when you could depend on yourself. Those lessons stuck. By his 20s, Carl had developed an obsession that would define his life: wildlife photography. Not the staged zoo animal variety. Real wilderness, raw nature. The kind of shots that required patience, skill, and weeks alone in places most people wouldn't dare venture. Family trips to national parks as a child had planted the seed. Watching elk graze at dawn, hearing wolves howl through mountain valleys, feeling utterly small beneath endless skies. Young Carl didn't just want to visit these places, he wanted to document them, to capture their essence on film. His colleagues at work described him as methodical, almost obsessive about detail. When Carl planned a photography trip, he planned everything. Supply lists, equipment checks, route maps, weather patterns, nothing left to chance. That 1976 Alaska trip changed him. 5 months in the Brooks Range, completely alone. He emerged with hundreds of photographs and a hunger for more. The solitude hadn't broken him. It had confirmed something. Out there beyond the noise and distraction of modern life, Carl found a version of himself he couldn't access anywhere else. Friends noticed the shift. Carl talked less about comfortable weekends and more about harsh winters, less about security and more about challenge. He seemed driven by something beyond art or adventure. He was seeking purification through isolation. The wilderness, Carl believed, offered a brutal honesty that civilization couldn't match. Nature didn't care about your resume or your intentions. It simply demanded respect, preparation, and vigilance. Carl was certain he could provide all three, but that certainty would prove fatal. March 1981. Carl began preparing for his return to the Brooks Range. The plan was ambitious. Spend the entire summer above the Arctic Circle, from late May through early September. 4 months of documenting wildlife at their most active: bears emerging from hibernation, caribou migration, wolf packs hunting across the tundra. He'd return with enough photographs to launch a serious career. His supply list filled 3 notebook pages. Rice, beans, canned goods, 1,400 pounds total. Enough calories, he calculated, for 120 days with a comfortable margin. 2 rifles and a shotgun for hunting fresh meat and defense against grizzlies. Hundreds of rolls of Kodak film, carefully wrapped against moisture. A canvas tent rated for sub-zero temperatures. Cold weather clothing, traps and snares. First aid supplies. Journals for documenting each day. Everything except a radio. Carl considered bringing one. The handheld models available in 1981 weighed about 12 pounds and offered spotty coverage in mountainous terrain he'd managed fine without one in 76. Why complicate things now? The bush pilot arrangement followed standard Alaska protocol. Carl contacted a local flying service in Fairbanks. The pilot, let's call him Andy, agreed to drop Carl at a remote lake in the Brooks Range. Date set, late May. The pickup conversation was brief. When should I come get you? End of August, maybe early September. I'll signal when I'm ready. How? I'll lay out bright fabric in an X pattern. You'll see it from the air. Andy nodded. Seemed reasonable. Bush pilots made dozens of these trips every summer. Hunters, photographers, researchers, all heading into the wilderness with similar loose arrangements. Radio communication was expensive and unreliable. Most expeditions relied on prearranged dates and visual signals. Carl paid half upfront, no contract, no written confirmation, no backup plan if Andy forgot or got busy with other clients. Just a handshake and mutual understanding between two self-reliant men. This was how things worked in Alaska's bush flying culture. Informal, trust-based, built on assumptions rather than systems. The Brooks Range itself sits entirely above the Arctic Circle, spanning 700 miles across northern Alaska. Glacial rivers carve through mountain passes. Tundra stretches for dozens of miles without a single tree. Summer temperatures hover between 40 and 60 degrees. Fahrenheit winter plunges to 50 below zero. Grizzlies, black bears, wolves, wolverines, caribou, Dall sheep, moose, all thriving in an ecosystem unchanged for millennia. No roads, no cell towers, no rescue helicopters standing by. Just you and whatever you brought. Carl loaded his gear in late May. The float plane touched down on the unnamed lake shortly after dawn on May 28, 1981. Carl stepped onto the muddy shore with the same feeling he'd had 5 years earlier. Liberation. The engine noise faded as Andy's plane climbed back toward Fairbanks, leaving behind a silence so complete it felt physical. No cars, no voices, no machinery humming in the background, just wind across water and the distant cry of a raven. He spent the first 3 days establishing camp tent positioned on high ground to avoid flooding, food caches buried and marked to protect them from bears, traps set along game trails identified by fresh tracks, a system for everything: water collection, waste disposal, equipment maintenance, daily photography routes. His journal from early June reads like a man living exactly the life he'd imagined. June 3rd. Photographed a grizzly sow with 2 cubs this morning. She approached within 40 yards before detecting my scent and moving off. Got 37 shots. Light was perfect. June 9th, caribou migration beginning. Counted approximately 200 animals moving northeast. Set up blind near river crossing June 15th. Caught 3 Arctic grayling in creek. Fresh protein tastes incredible after weeks of canned food. June 22nd. The midnight sun creates challenging exposure conditions, but the 24-hour daylight means unlimited shooting time. His trap system worked. He harvested several small game animals. The rifles performed flawlessly. His cold weather gear kept him comfortable during occasional storms. Everything was going according to plan. The wilderness felt not like an adversary, but a collaborator. Carl was documenting something authentic, something few humans would ever witness. His photographs captured moments of raw beauty. A wolf pack traveling single file through morning fog, a bull moose silhouetted against snowmelt, ptarmigan nesting among lichen-covered rocks. This was why he came. This was worth the isolation. By late August, the wilderness began to show its less forgiving side. Carl's journal entries shifted from confident observations to cautious notes. Food reserves dwindled faster than expected. Rice and beans no longer sustained the calorie burn from daily exertion. The traps he set were often discovered and raided by wolves and foxes. Fresh kills became a rare success. The unpredictable hunt added pressure where there had once been calm routine. Mild frostbite showed up first as numbness in fingertips and toes, Carl wrote, of aching joints and slowing movements. The endless daylight of summer was giving way to shorter days, casting longer shadows across tundra grasses. The brutal environment that had invited him now tested his limits. He reflected on the stark contrast between expectation and reality, a theme reaching deeper than mere survival mechanics. The silence of isolation grew heavier, and quiet moments brought a creeping loneliness. Descriptions of wildlife encounters turned more sparse, replaced by introspective scripture on solitude and the human spirit. The plan for a timely pickup seemed less certain with each passing day. Weather delays and shifting schedules had whispered the possibility that Andy, the bush pilot, might miss the window. Yet Carl trusted the informal agreement. In all these subtle signs, nature was laying down its first warnings. There would be no easy way out. September brought cold winds and an unforgiving truth. The pickup date passed without Andy's arrival. Carl's diary pages turned darker. As temperatures plummeted below freezing, the relentless snow began to blanket the land. Daylight shrank from near 24 hours back toward the grasp of night. Food supplies, once abundant, were now dangerously low. The tundra's generous grace had shifted into stark hostility. Frostbite advanced, spreading frost numbness to fingers and toes, stiffening movements, and inflicting sharp, unrelenting pain. The rifles, traps, and meticulous preparations were increasingly overcome by the raw elemental forces. Carl confronted a chilling realization in his journal. The very informal pickup plan, rooted in trust and assumption, had failed him. He wrote of missed signals. No bright X in the clearing. No plane overhead. No call. The thought of hiking 75 miles back to civilization surfaced repeatedly, a desperate possibility. But the physical toll of frostbite and dwindling strength turned the idea into a near impossibility. In the deepening isolation, the psychological weight grew. The diary reveals oscillation between stoic determination and mounting despair. The vast, silent Arctic stretched infinitely, reflecting Carl's own mental solitude. Emotions ranged from resolute focus to haunting loneliness. Nature, ever indifferent, pressed forward. The expedition was no longer a challenge of skill and endurance. It was a struggle for survival itself. Carl understood the silence of the Arctic was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a tomb. His journal entries grew sparse but deliberate. Recognizing his fate, Carl concentrated on leaving a clear record of what had transpired. He organized his photographs and notes thoughtfully, hoping to tell a story beyond his own. He sealed his tent against the encroaching winds, a last barrier against the freezing world inside. Frost traced delicate patterns on the canvas, mirroring the quiet inevitability settling in his bones. His strength waned with each day, his body ravaged by frostbite and starvation. Yet his determination to maintain order remained, a testament to a methodical mind confronting loss. In his final writings, Carl balanced acceptance with regret for the single assumption that had condemned him. Acceptance of the wilderness's unyielding demands, a farewell to family and the world he left behind. There was no panic, no cry for help, only quiet dignity, an endurance of spirit amid silence made absolute. Months slipped by before searchers ventured into the frozen expanse of the Brooks Range. Late January 1982, voices carried on the wind, Alaska State Troopers, bush pilots, and volunteers responding to the missing man's trail. February 2nd brought the somber discovery. Carl's sealed tent lay intact, a fragile sanctuary amidst bone-deep cold. Inside, a frozen figure preserved by Arctic rigor mortis. Nearby, empty food caches and scattered disorganized traps whispered of desperate survival efforts. Hundreds of photographic rolls waited in their containers, silent witnesses to the beauty Carl sought and the harsh truths he faced. His diary, carefully preserved, became the expedition's final voice. It revealed meticulous preparations interwoven with quiet acknowledgments of growing despair. Rescuers were moved by the preparation and haunted by the oversight that severed communication questions emerged. How had a man so prepared been left so utterly alone? Media attention transformed Carl's death into a cautionary tale about wilderness planning and the price of trusting assumptions unconfirmed. The world learned that in the vast silence of nature, no plan can rely solely on hope. Carl McCunn's story joined the Arctic's long ledger, etched in ice, memory, and lessons, hard won. The investigation into Carl McCunn's death concluded with findings both straightforward and haunting. Death by starvation and exposure. Timeline reconstructed through diary entries that spanned hope to acceptance, no criminal negligence discovered. Yet systemic vulnerabilities exposed. Alaska's bush pilot industry faced scrutiny. The informal culture, handshake agreements, verbal confirmations, loose scheduling, had functioned for decades until it didn't. Reforms followed. Written confirmation requirements became standard practice. Emergency communication devices transitioned from luxury to necessity. Wilderness expedition protocols evolved, mandating backup plans and fail-safes. Carl's diary became required. Reading and survival training programs across Alaska and beyond his photographs, preserved through Arctic cold, toured galleries and educational institutions, each image carried dual meaning, artistic beauty and tragic reminder, the caribou migration he captured, the wolf pack silhouetted against tundra dawn, the grizzly cubs playing near glacial streams. Every frame whispered the same message. Preparation means nothing without communication. Survival experts dissected Carl's decisions with professional rigor. The 75-mile trek to civilization remained controversial. Some argued he should have attempted it in September, when strength and weather still allowed passage. Others recognized the impossible calculus: frostbite, diminishing food, unknown terrain, plummeting temperatures. There are no clean answers in survival analysis. Psychologists examined the diary's arc from confidence to despair. The isolation's psychological toll mirrored accounts from Antarctic explorers and solo sailors, oscillation between hope and darkness, introspection deepening into existential confrontation. Carl's family processed grief privately, choosing to honor his memory through education rather than blame. Memorials appeared in Texas and Alaska, annual remembrances marked by those who understood his passion for wild places. The wilderness survival community adopted him as one of their own, not as a cautionary figure of recklessness, but as a skilled man undone by a single miscommunication in an unforgiving environment. His legacy lives in the protocols that now protect others, in the emergency beacons carried into remote territories, in the confirmed pickup dates and backup contact systems. Carl McCunn's death saved lives he would never meet. Nature operates without mercy or morality. It doesn't reward passion. It doesn't recognize preparation. It simply exists, indifferent to human ambition and error alike. Carl McCunn understood this intellectually. His meticulous planning proved that. Yet understanding and implementing are separated by chasms wider than the Brooks Range itself. One assumption. One unconfirmed pickup date. One decision to trust informal protocols. That's the margin between life and death in places where rescue doesn't arrive on schedule. His story joins the wilderness canon alongside Christopher McCandless and countless unnamed others. But Carl's distinction matters. He wasn't naive or underprepared. He was experienced, equipped, and capable. His tragedy stemmed from communication failure, not incompetence. The reforms his death inspired represent his true monument. Every confirmed expedition plan, every emergency beacon activated, every life saved by protocols born from his oversight. If given another chance, what would Carl do differently? The answer seems obvious in hindsight. Confirm the pickup, bring a radio, create redundancy in communication systems. But hindsight offers clarity unavailable in the moment. Carl made decisions based on experience, culture, and confidence. Reasonable decisions that proved fatal. His photographs remain. His diary endures. His lessons echo through survival training worldwide. The wilderness claimed Carl McCunn in 1981, but his voice still warns those who follow. In remote places, assumptions are luxuries no one can afford. Thanks for watching. See you in next video.